faithfully delivering value, unpacking great books worldwide. Hi, this is Sally with Book Talk. Today, we're interpreting the book Beijing's Rickshaw Pullers by American sinologist David Strand. Speaking of rickshaws, lots of folks know him from Republican-era movies and books. It's a human-powered ride. Workers who pull those single-seat vehicles for a living are called rickshaw pullers or huanbaoche,
Or just rickshaw.
first introduced to Beijing from Japan in 1886, so it's also called dongzhangche, while down south it's huangbaoche. Originally, rickshaw wheels had wooden shells with iron rims, no shocks, so they'd sway and jolt all over. Plus, with crummy roads back then, they tipped easy, so not many riders. By 1909, new rubber-tired rickshaws came in, first solid tires, then air-filled ones, easing passenger discomfort and pullers' strain. After the Republic started, roads got better, riders increased, and 'cause they were on demand and handy, rickshaws boomed in cities, becoming key transport with more pullers. In 1920s Beijing, 1 in 6 adult men was a rickshaw puller, making them a big deal in town. David Strand's Beijing's Rickshaw Pullers came out in 1989. First book ever on this group. The book's subtitle is Citizens and Politics in the 1920s. Back then, Beijing was mostly ruled by Beiyang warlords. After Yuan Shikai died in 1916, the Beiyang group split into 3. Anhui clique led by Zhuan Qiru, Zili clique by Feng Guozang, Kaokun Wu Peifu, and Fentian clique by Zhang Zulin. From the 1919 May 4th movement on, Beiyang power rotated among Anhui, Zili, Fenqin warlords, sparking many fights over Beijing. Meanwhile, in July 1925, the Kuomintang set up the nationalist government in Guangzhou, splitting China into north-south rule. As the nationalist government grew stronger, Beijing's status as the old political hub faded. In 1928, the Kuomintang set its capital in Nanjing and launched the Northern Expedition to capture Beijing. Since the Kuomintang didn't plan to relocate the capital to Beijing, they just changed its name to Beiping. The special municipality was abbreviated as Beiping. Of course, this book still calls it Beijing. In the 1920s, Beijing citizens were already used to the revolving door of power among the Beiyang warlords. When news of warlord conflicts came, merchant reps and retired officials would form delegations to welcome victorious warlords in the suburbs. When victors turned into losers, they'd politely send them off on trains leaving Beijing. For Beijing citizens to protect their interests amid warlord chaos, they had to slowly dive into politics. They started learning about politics from places tied to daily life, like shops, schools, and neighborhoods. Then they got more involved in political life through guilds, unions, and other self-governing associations. In this process, self-governing associations made up of Beijing's elites and notables played a key role. Citizens had only 2 choices: accept protection from associations led by chambers of commerce, or accept the ruler's ruling and challenges. For factions like Beiyang warlords, Kuomintang, Beijing party branches, and even the Communist Party Beijing Committee, to build stable rule or grow power in Beijing, they had to win citizens over. For the associations, they had to fight on 2 fronts, resisting attacks from officialdom and external economic forces above, while bearing pressure from citizens below, making things complicated. So, Beijing's Rickshaw Pullers isn't a study on Beijing's working class or a history of labor movements. David Strand uses rickshaw pullers as a lens, drawing on loads of Chinese, English, and Japanese sources to detail 1920s Beijing life and how citizens got drawn into politics, developing awareness and power. This process started with the 1919 May 4th movement and ended with rickshaw pullers' violent attack on trams in 1929. Next, I'll interpret Beijing's rickshaw pullers around the following 3 questions. First, why are rickshaw pullers seen as a representative group of Beijing's laboring masses? Second, how do the police and chambers of commerce maintain social order in Beijing? Third, let's discuss the 1929 incident where rickshaw pullers smashed trams. First, let's examine the initial question. How did rickshaw pullers become representative of Beijing's laboring masses? Rickshaw pullers are the primary protagonists in the author's narrative. We call them a group because they embody four key elements of a social collective. First, they were not only numerous but played a vital role in Beijing's social fabric. 1920s Beijing remained pre-industrial, with factory workers representing just a fraction of the working class. Rickshaw pullers were the largest single category of workers. At their peak, there were 60,000 pullers. In 1926 Beijing, these 60,000 pullers served 500,000 passenger rides daily.
With Beijing's population at just 1 million, that figure is staggering.
For comparison, Shanghai in 2021 had 25 million residents with subway ridership nearing 10 million daily. Meaning, a century ago, Beijing's pullers had greater transportation impact than Shanghai's subway today. Second, pullers shared similar livelihoods and living standards. Rickshaws required no special skills, just strength, and were less grueling than portering, with slightly better pay. So, when Beijing's destitute hit rock bottom, most became pullers to survive. Each puller supported 2 to 3 people, meaning pullers and dependents made up nearly 1/5 of Beijing's population. Only 3% owned their rickshaws. The other 97% rented from garages, businesses that leased them out. Beijing had hundreds of small garages, each with under 30 rickshaws. Renters needed no deposit but required guarantors known to the owner or personal connections. In 1930, underground communist Wu Guang, a Peking University student, used connections to rent a rickshaw while organizing pullers' unions. Since rickshaws were rented, pullers' income came from fares minus garage fees. The average daily income for rickshaw pullers was 130 copper coins, but renters had to pay 30 coins daily in fees. Single pullers spent 60 coins on food daily, leaving just 40 coins after a hard day's work. Married pullers faced heavier burdens, working 9 to 12 hours daily to support families, though actual pulling time was only half that, with the rest spent waiting for fares. The toughest part was passengers demanding speed, so young, strong pullers got more customers and earned better than average. Some skilled pullers could improve family meals and even afford theater trips. The book mentions a landlord family fleeing to Beijing. The matriarch was shocked their old life was worse than pullers. Because pullers ate meat 2 to 3 times monthly, and kids had snack money, living standards country landlords barely reached. The trade had regulations. Operating rickshaws required police inspections. For garage rickshaws, owners registered pullers' names, ages, hometowns, vehicle numbers, and guarantors. Pullers needed license plates nailed to rickshaws as ID and numbered vests. In 1926 Beijing, 32,000 registered rickshaws were numbered 1 to 32,000. The numbered vest, printed with matching rickshaw digits, was proof of legitimacy. Same-color vests helped recover lost items and stolen rickshaws, and improved city appearance. To prevent accidents, rickshaws required bells and lights, like modern car horns or bike bells. At night, they needed lit lamps so pedestrians could see and dodge. They drove on the left, never speeding, especially slowing at intersections or turns. Traffic violations brought fines of 10 to 40 copper coins. Finally, pullers shared social psychology. City residents made up 3/4 of Beijing's pullers. Some were bannermen, others urban unemployed or bankrupt merchants, plus demobilized soldiers, cops, down-and-out politicians, or Qing-era scholars. Most Beijing citizens became pullers out of desperation, supporting families without begging or stealing. Poor farmers from villages made up 1/4 of Beijing's pullers. Most were farmers near Beijing. Some pulled rickshaws seasonally during farming off times. Others like Shanzi in Rickshaw Boy, were landless farmers forced to Beijing, hoping hard work would improve their lives. As Beijing's lowest class, pullers typically had little education, low morals, and easily fell into vices. They drank, gambled, smoked opium, visited prostitutes, like Xiangzi catching an STD from a rich man's concubine.
Meanwhile, hardship and oppression drove many to scams. Strand's accounts show pullers cheating passengers, extorting fares, causing disputes. Some even stole garage rickshaws.
Such behavior ruined pullers' reputation among citizens, yet intellectuals saw them as deeply pitiable. They epitomized Beijing's underclass, especially teens under 17 or ragged elders over 50, whose weak strength meant earnings matched beggars. These groups especially won intellectual sympathy. May 4th era writers like Lu Xun, Xu Jimo, and Yu Dafu focused intensely on pullers' poverty and tragic fates, creating literary works about them. The most famous is Lao Shi's Rickshaw Boy, tracing Shamsi's cycle of buying, losing rickshaws, showing how the materialistic city consumed him, turning him into its ugliness. Intellectuals' writings about rickshaw pullers can also be seen as enlightenment for them. This enlightenment, on one hand, awakened rickshaw pullers to their own status and sparked their group consciousness. On the other hand, through intellectuals' appeals, government and society expanded relief efforts for rickshaw pullers on a larger scale, such as organizing rickshaw puller relief societies, establishing clubs, setting up workshops, and resettling unemployed pullers. These activities increased opportunities for pullers to interact, helping form and enhance their group consciousness. Starting in the 1920s, rickshaw pullers began developing independent political awareness to fight for their rights. When it prompted the problem, they saw some people living their lives and getting their faith under their rights, and their son suffers. But it wasn't intellectuals who helped defend their rights. It was the police and chambers of commerce. This leads to the second part of the book. In their interactions with rickshaw pullers, how did the police and chambers of commerce maintain order in Beijing? Generally, it's understandable that police maintain order, but how did chambers of commerce as a civil group play this role? To understand this, we first need to look at the origins of Beijing police and chambers of commerce, then discuss their conflicts and cooperation over rickshaw puller issues. After the Xinhai Revolution, old Beijing disintegrated, leaving two key political legacies for Republican-era Beijing: police and chambers of commerce. First, the police. In 1900, the Qing government began implementing the new policies. Police reform was a major part of this. In 1930, underground communist Wu Guang, a Peking University student, rented a rickshaw through connections to organize a union among pullers. Since the rickshaw was rented, pullers' income came from fares minus garage fees. The average daily income for pullers was 130 copper coins. If renting, they paid 30 coins in fees daily. Single pullers spent 60 coins on food daily, so after a hard day, they only kept 40 coins. For married pullers, life was harder. To earn enough for their families, they had to work 9 to 12 hours daily, with actual pulling time only half of that, waiting for fares the rest. The hardest part was passengers demanding speed. So young, strong rickshaw pullers could attract more customers and often earned more than average pullers. Some skilled pullers could improve family meals and even afford to see plays. The book mentions a landlord family fleeing to Beijing. The matriarch was shocked their old life was worse than pullers. Because pullers ate meat 2 to 3 times monthly, and kids had snack money, living standards country landlords barely reached. Additionally, the rickshaw trade had regulations. Operating vehicles required police inspections. For garage rickshaws, owners needed to register pullers' names, ages, hometowns, vehicle numbers, and guarantors. Pullers needed license plates and numbered vests. Plates had vehicle numbers nailed to rickshaws as ID. In 1926, Beijing, 32,000 registered rickshaws were numbered from 1 to 32,000. The numbered vest, printed with matching rickshaw digits, was proof of legitimacy. Same color vests helped recover lost items and stolen rickshaws and improved city appearance. To prevent accidents, rickshaws required bells and lights. Bells like modern car horns or bike bells. At night, they needed lit lamps so pedestrians could see and dodge. They drove on the left, never speeding, especially slowing at intersections or turns. Traffic violations brought fines of 10 to 40 copper coins. Finally, pullers shared social psychology. City residents made up 3/4 of Beijing's pullers. Some were battermen, others urban unemployed or bankrupt merchants, plus demobilized soldiers, cops, down-and-out politicians, or Qing-era scholars. Most Beijing citizens became pullers out of desperation, supporting families without begging or stealing.
Poor farmers from villages made up 1/4 of Beijing's pullers.
Most were farmers near Beijing. Some pulled rickshaws seasonally during farming off times. Others, like Shangzi in Rickshaw Boy, were landless farmers forced to Beijing, hoping hard work would improve their lives. As Beijing's lowest class, pullers typically had little education, low morals, and easily fell into vices. They drank, gambled, smoked opium, visited prostitutes, like Shangzi catching an STD from a rich man's concubine. Meanwhile, hardship and oppression drove many to scams. Strand's accounts show pullers cheating passengers, extorting fares, causing disputes. Some even stole garage rickshaws. Such behavior ruined pullers' reputation among citizens, yet intellectuals saw them as deeply pitiable. They epitomized Beijing's underclass, especially teens under 17 or ragged elders over 50, whose weak strength meant earnings matched beggars. These groups especially won intellectual sympathy. May 4th era writers like Lu Xun, Xu Jimo, and Yu Dafu focused intensely on pullers' poverty and tragic fates, creating literary works about them. The most famous is Lao She's Rickshaw Boy, tracing Shangzi's cycle of buying losing rickshaws, showing how the materialistic city consumed him. Intellectuals' writings about rickshaw pullers also served as enlightenment for them. This enlightenment awakened pullers to their status and ignited group consciousness. Meanwhile, intellectuals' advocacy spurred broader government and societal relief efforts for pullers, like organizing relief societies, puller clubs, workshops, and resettling unemployed pullers. Others, like Shangzi in Rickshaw Boy, were landless farmers forced to Beijing, hoping hard work would improve their lives. As Beijing's lowest class, pullers typically had little education, low morals, and easily fell into vices. They drank, gambled, smoked opium, visited prostitutes, like Shangzi catching an STD from a rich man's concubine. Meanwhile, hardship and oppression drove many to scams. Strand's accounts show pullers cheating passengers, extorting fares, causing disputes. Some even stole garage rickshaws. Such behavior ruined pullers' reputation among citizens, yet intellectuals saw them as deeply pitiable. They epitomized Beijing's underclass, especially teens under 17 or ragged elders over 50, whose weak strength meant earnings matched beggars. These groups especially won intellectual sympathy. May 4th era writers like Lu Xun, Xu Jimo, and Yu Dafu focused intensely on pullers' poverty and tragic fates, creating literary works about them. The most famous is Lao She's Rickshaw Boy, tracing Shangzi's cycle of buying, losing rickshaws, showing how the materialistic city consumed him. Intellectuals' writings about rickshaw pullers also served as enlightenment for them. This enlightenment awakened pullers to their status and ignited group consciousness. Meanwhile, intellectuals' advocacy spurred broader government and societal relief efforts for pullers, like organizing relief societies, puller clubs, workshops, and resettling unemployed pullers. On the other hand, Sun Shui-shi argued that tram power lines were too close to civilian lines, requiring street-side shops to be demolished for wiring, and construction debris blocking roads, all harming chamber members' business rights. On December 16, 1924, just before the tram company's opening, Sun Shui-shi used his chairman power to mobilize thousands of pullers for a track-blocking protest. Tram executives asked Duan Qirui for help, who sent his son, Duan Hongye, to handle it. Duan Hongye contacted police chief Li Dasan, telling tram director Zhou Zuomin that only Sun Shui could resolve this. With thousands of pullers already gathered, Zhou Zuomin sent messengers to warn Sun Shui. If trouble happened tomorrow, Police Chief Li Dawson would arrest him. Li Dawson was Duan Qirui's appointee. Under political pressure, Sun backed down, betraying the furious pullers. In this anti-tram incident, chambers and police united, making pullers sacrificial pawns who gained nothing. Even the promised 20,000 yuan for pullers' factory was taken by police for salaries. Thus, 1920s Beijing police and chambers jointly became the city's primary order keepers. As Beijing's largest workforce, pullers, impoverished by trams, transformed from street disruptors to riot risks, culminating in the 1929 tram smashing incident. Which brings us to our third point. We'll briefly introduce the event, then analyze its causes and political impact on Beijing. On October 22, 1929, pullers blocked tram lines 1 and 3 with hundreds of rickshaws, halting all trams. At 5 p.m., hundreds marched from Sidan Paiyu toward Tianjiao Tram Depot, soon joined by 25,000 citywide pullers wielding iron tools, smashing every tram and tearing up tracks. Aftermath: 60 trams destroyed, all staff fled, most stations ruined.
At 9 p.m., over 1,000 pullers prepared to burn down the Beijing Tram Company's buildings, garages, and power plants.
Only under military protection did pullers retreat, saving Fala Temple Tram Depot. Aftermath: police arrested over 1,000 people, executed 4, and forcibly dissolved the Rickshaw Pullers Union. On the surface, this seemed like spontaneous puller resistance against modern transport. Actually, the roots trace back to late 1924. The tram company's founding reflected Beijing citizens' growing political involvement. As mentioned earlier, 1920s Beijing was mostly under competing warlords. Angwai, Zili, and Fengtian warlords fought for control through wars. 1920s Zili-Angwai War, 1922's First Zili-Fengtian War, and during 1924's Second Zili-Fengtian War, a Feng Yuxiang staged a coup, imprisoning Cao Kun, expelling Pli from the Forbidden City, and inviting Sun Yat-sen to lead nation building. After Sun Yat-sen's death on March 12, 1925, the nationalist government pursued the Northern Expedition. Then, Kuomintang and Communist Party Beijing branches collaborated to welcome the expeditionary forces. Post-1925 saw rising political engagement among Beijing citizens. Warlords focused on power struggles, relaxing city governance, creating space for chambers of commerce. Both Kuomintang and communists vied for control through newspapers and unions to win public support. Though pullers were Beijing's largest group, their mobility and dispersion made them harder to organize than factory workers. So communists focused on thousands of factory workers. Labor movements grew under their leadership. In January 1925, 1 month after the tram company's founding, drivers and conductors struck to protest soldier fare dodging. Unable to gain factory workers, the Kuomintang turned to artisans. Thus, Beijing's laborers split. Communist-led unions for railway and tram workers, and Kuomintang-aligned artisan associations. The second group was traditional artisans. The Kuomintang heavily courted rickshaw pullers, water carriers, carpenters, etc. They were Beijing's largest labor force, mostly joining various artisan associations. These associations were chambers of commerce's traditional turf. Guilds fiercely negotiated wage hikes for members during 1920s inflation and currency devaluation. And 12.3 list. When 1924 prices rose 23.5% and copper coins lost 40% value, the 20,000-member Carpenters Guild struck for higher pay. Guilds also protected strikers through hometown or family ties. Unlike factories, recall the tram company strike. After training replacements, they fired 29 leaders. Conductors. Beyond self-interest, guilds started engaging in socio-political activities. On May 30, 1925, British colonists killed 12 protesting Chinese workers in Shanghai, the May 30th massacre, igniting nationwide protests. In Beijing, After 8,000 students marched on June 3rd, citizen associations, unions, and chambers joined rallies. At its peak, anti-imperialist protests reached over 100,000 people. The May 30th movement was Beijing's first mass political participation, profoundly shaping its politics. Oh, the 1929 tram destruction was this movement's continuation. On one hand, Beijing's artisan associations formed unions through protests, like the Rickshaw Pullers Union. Unions enabled strikes and rallies to fight for interests, becoming the organizational base for the 1929 tram destruction. On the other hand, union growth led to the City Federation of Trade Unions. To co-opt traditional guilds, the KMT Beijing branch formed the federation in June 1928 after the Northern Expedition captured Beijing. The federation included modern industries, trams, telecom, and artisans, pullers, and barbers. Its creation fueled the tram destruction. On one hand, the Kuomintang branch and federation meddled in unions' rights struggles, sparking deep resentment that led to rupture. In early 1929, electric light and tram unions split from the federation, signaling its loss of control over city unions. Meanwhile, power struggles within the federation directly triggered the tram destruction.
Federation leader Zhang Yingqing belonged to Lon Jingwei's faction, clashing fiercely with Chiang Kai-shek's CC clique.
The CC clique, short for Central Club, was a political faction led by Qing's allies, the Chen brothers. They dominated party organs, especially the Central Bureau of Investigation, local branches, and universities. In June 1929, the CC clique prevailed in Beiping's party reshuffle, expelling Jianian King. By October 1929, tram and telegraph unions petitioned to reorganize the federation. Knowing he'd lose any election, Zhang instigated his cousin Chen Zisiu to mobilize rickshaw pullers for sabotage.
Chen led 1,000 plus pullers with clubs to support the Federation, sparking the notorious Beijing tram destruction.
This was Beijing's only large-scale civic riot in the 20th century. Every major group, pullers, citizens, police, merchants, politicians, military, media, workers, Kuomintang, took the stage, and revealing the complexity and vitality of Republican Beijing's politics.
Rickshaw pullers defended their interests as citizens, urban political action to protect their group.
Rooted in the failed 1924 track-blocking protest against trams. Thus, the destruction was citizens' accidental violent expression of political awakening. Finally, let's wrap up with a quick summary and review of this book. Press. This isn't a historical work. It's a specialized study in political science. The author applies theories and methods of behavioralist political analysis. Behavioralist political analysis systematically examines political phenomena through empirical, causal explanations, focusing especially on political influence. So, what's political influence? It's a relationship between actors where one's intentions affect others' actions or decisions. By method, political influence splits into persuasion and inducement. Persuasion uses speeches, newspapers, or broadcasts to guide actions, like communist-led strikes or student movements. Inducement forces a binary choice on the influenced. Basically, your money or your life. The harshest inducement is coercion, like when the Kuomintang restricted trade unions after forming the City Federation, or dissolved rickshaw unions after the tram destruction. Through this lens, the author reveals a uniquely Chinese model of urban public politics. This model blends political inclusivity, flexible participation, societal responsibility, and fused administrative representative governance. The author argues it let Beijing build police forces and social groups to regulate order while relying on chambers and unions for stability, cultivating a politically conscious class and stable society. Laying groundwork for post-1949 Beijing, this pioneering work on rickshaw pullers recontextualizes early 20th century China through David Strand's lens. That wraps our reading of Citizens and Politics in the 1920s. Find notes below and join us next time.